The story from the airline industry in terms of change is not only back to that point that I made earlier about more stuff happening in a month than in a year, but the sort of overarching tableau of change is really the fact that for the first 50 years of our existence worldwide, airlines were subject to a set of very intrusive government economic regulation. We're not talking about safety or operating things. But for example, in the United States, for 50 years, a group of lawyers in Washington made all the commercial decisions for us. Who could be an airline? Where could you fly? How often could you fly? And how much could you charge for the ticket? Even things like amenities were regulated. Now, in that kind of environment, we, or our grandparents that managed the business back then, they knew those rules and they managed their business to those rules. But in that kind of very artificial environment, if you went along thinking that would last forever, you were going to be happy. But in 1978, that all changed and the domestic industry was deregulated, meaning all of that government economic control went away. All those lawyers found new jobs and now we could compete. Well, thank you very much. All the older airlines growing up in that environment of control, they didn't care about cost because, of course, if your costs went up, you just passed it on to your customers. So at the time of deregulation, all the older airlines have costs up here and any new company coming in have costs down here. And so these last 30 years have been this massive adjustment to this new reality. And so one of the points going forward to cap and trade or to other kinds of fundamental changes in the game for an industry might be, do not underestimate how long it will take for your firm to make adjustments, particularly if your firm is one like the airline business, where there's a lot of external things that impinge and where there is this whole point of managerial latitude being greatly reduced. It's not that we're stupid, and we've worked very hard not to be, but there is a lot of momentum that carries along, that keeps you from doing things you want to do. One of those pieces of momentum is the reality of union penetration of the older airlines workforce. You know, many of the new airlines are not unionized at all. Nobody at JetBlue is in a union. They can do things with their cabin crew, with their pilots, with their mechanics that we cannot easily or quickly do because we have a contract with our pilots union or our flight attendants union. Now, don't get me wrong, we understand the reality of collective bargaining, but it does reduce our latitude vis-a-vis those that don't have those kinds of contracts. So the point being, I think, whether we're talking cap and trade or other fundamental changes that may come into other kinds of businesses, first of all, be prepared. Second of all, do not underestimate how quickly it will, some consulting firm comes to you and says, we'll have this sorted out for you in a year and a half. Be very skeptical of that possibility.